Rishi understands that progress is made over time, a little step at a time. If you keep making steps forward, you get there. It's not going to be perfect overnight. It's going to be perfected over time into a continuous state of greater perfection, but never full perfection. That's the quality of this Rishi, to make that progression. It is the 30 degrees part that has to do with progress. People with this in a good shape make progress with whatever they touch. They'll start here with something, and when they're done, it's way up here. Okay? The law of this Rishi, okay? I always try to find one word to label the law of what, okay? The best word I could come up with for this Rishi is he represents the law of long, okay? The idea of that is, if it's been done a long time, it just becomes law. Okay, for instance, common law marriage. While you've been living with her, you've been living with him for 12 years, and now you guys are broken up and don't ever see each other. Well, we're going to go through a divorce settlement because you've been living together so long, you're basically married, so we're going to call it marriage. Just because of longevity, the length of time you've been together. So there's this law of, if something's been happening a long time, it's just the truth. Oh, I never married her, never wanted to. Yeah, but been living with her for 12 years. She's been taking care of everything, helping you with everything for 12 years. You can't just kick her out. You owe her for that. For the progress you made over that time, she has earned a fair share of it, even though you weren't legally married. Okay? It's this idea. Over time, we progress, and that progress becomes a law of its own. Okay? Patent law is similar to this. Okay? With patent law, you have to look to see if anyone ever before invented this thing or something similar to it. And if so, they have the lawful rights to it, not you, because their idea was in existence longer than yours. Even if they never built it, even if they never marketed it, even if they just talked to 10 people about it and there's a record of them talking to those 10 people, their idea was around before yours and you don't have a legal claim to it. Okay? So patent law also shows this. But the idea is that anything that's been done a long time becomes a law of its own. Now this is really important when we take it to a level of individual. If as an individual, this is how you've been for a long time, that's the law of your life. People can't just barge in and tell you to do it differently. So let's say we've all been doing astrology, it's just what we do. Or people have been practicing a certain religion, it's just what they do. And then let's say a force comes in, invades that country and says, you can't do astrology, and you can't practice this religion. They're breaking that law of Pulaha, is that we have a legal right to continue doing what we have been doing. And so those invaders, in doing that, become abusers of the law. And we see this happening in a lot of countries, right? Like in Iran, this has happened, where a lot of traditions cannot be followed. And you'll remember that customs, which essentially become laws eventually, are ruled by Aryama, the Aditya of this Rishi, right? So this idea that longevity creates a law. If you've been doing something, no one can come in and legally, rightfully, by legally I mean rightfully and truthfully say you can't do that. That also means with respect to people, if they've been like this a long time, we have no rights to come into their life and say, okay, now you're going to live differently. Now you're going to do differently. Okay? It's simply the law of what's been happening over a long, extended period of time has a right to exist. It's a truthful thing. God's allowed it to exist for whatever reason. May or may not make sense, but it does. And so it will continue to exist, and it's legally rightful to exist. Anyone who tries to not make it exist is breaking the law. So this has a lot to do with respecting the traditions that have happened. And good rulers will do this. If a good person ends up ruling a place or invading a place for whatever reason, they're going to allow traditions to continue. They're not going to try to squish them. That's breaking this law. So there's a sin that happens when we say something that has been has to change all of a sudden. Okay? And it doesn't work. Okay? If we look at it in practice, we'll see when people try to drastically change something, it's always been this way and now we're going to change it. It has big social and economic ramifications that make it not worth doing. Okay? So that's the law of this. What has existed over a long period of time becomes a truth in itself. And that in the being, how you've been over a long period of time becomes a truth of what you are. That's why you've been this so long. This idea of the law, that what has been happening over a long time becomes a law in itself, really applies to the individual person. Okay, and of course in the astrology, it's applying it to the individual person is what we're mostly going to be doing. So the idea is, over a long period of time, what a person has been doing, not what they've been doing because of their pathology, because of their psychosis, because of their mental disease, etc., etc., but what they've been doing because of their intelligence, their knowledge, what they've been doing because doing it and learning it gives them a joy, because there's a joy attached to this Rishi, okay, through the Rishi who taught this Rishi all the knowledge being the joyful Rishi, right? So we learn things, we know things, we're into things where we cultivate knowledge, and the sign is always getting knowledge on what it's into. Whatever it is that we do over a long period of time, we do it because it's a truth of who we are. And therefore it becomes a law of who we are. The things I do over a long period of time because the knowledge brings me joy, and knowing it makes me feel good, and it's a useful, productive thing I can do with it and have been doing with it. The only reason I've been doing it a long time because it's who I really am. The things that aren't who we really are, that aren't the truth of who we really are, we don't do those a long time. Okay? So the things we do over a long period of time with joy and with knowledge, we do because they're the truth of who we are. So this Aditya, this Rishi, helps us see the truth of who we are by examining that. And that becomes a law of us. We have the right to be that and do that no matter what. And anyone who wants to take that right away is breaking the law. Okay, so Iran, for instance, doesn't allow people to practice astrology. It's illegal in Iran. So let's say Iran and America war. Iran wins the war and they march in here and say no astrology. And us astrologers who've just been doing this forever, is because it's just who we are. I know lots of astrologers who did really good. They were around for 5 years, did great work and disappeared. It wasn't who they really were. What they were was something else, okay? But for those of us who just are astrologers and just have astrology knowledge because that's what we are, because of this Rishi, we're not just going to stop doing astrology because some people show up and say it's illegal, all right? It's just, that would be like saying stop breathing. We just can't stop breathing. We're still going to think astrologically. We're just going to do astrology. No one might know we're doing it, but we ain't stopping. It would be impossible to start. So this Rishi has to do with the long things that are long for the simple purpose, because that's who we really are. They're the truth of who we are. Okay? Nothing that's not truthful can last a long period of time. And we have to respect that in people. We can't expect somebody to just change that about them because we want them to or they don't think it's right. Okay?